So it is March. We are in the thick of the madness. And something that is very maddening is how bad your bracket is.
The lack of madness, I'd say, is what's most maddening about it. So how bad my bracket is. I love to pick upsets, and there's no upsets. So, it's a particularly boring year for March Madness.
There's been a fifth of there was the Drake upset. You just picked all upsets.
That's what I do every year. I pick all upsets every year. I have a strict rule of only allowing one seed to make it to the Final Four. And
so basically you're not trying to win.
No. I win every 10 years. I'm on a track record of winning a tournament every 10 years, which basically pays for all the other years.
Let me just report.
There's no upsets this year.
I have the evidence right here.
Yeah.
Okay, I have the evidence right here. First of all, in your championship, you have Clemson.
Thank you.
Not just in the Final Four. You had Clemson winning it all.
Clemson beat Duke. Clemson beat who's the other one seed? Not Florida. Auburn.
Okay.
Clemson's a great team, but I mean, Clemson losing was one of the few upsets in that.
There was no upsets. But
there's one upset so far. Clemson getting rocked in the first round.
Had them in the final.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. But the madness has started, which also, I don't know if you've noticed, all these podcasts out here, they're constantly advertising Prize Picks, DraftKings.
Yeah.
All your prop position bets. Like, it seems like everyone is, I wouldn't be surprised if someday we are.
Yep.
But no, for real.
Yeah.
How should we why is that such a thing? Like why is gambling so addicting? Mm-hmm. And is there a healthy way to do this, or is it just completely not permissible? Like, are we just, or like how should we be looking at this whole new era of, and you can put money on anything?
I would put gambling in the category of wisdom. I can't think of a text that dogmatically would condemn it, and certainly not a text that says it's a great thing. So you would have Proverbs even saying, in an example of man picking the lot, but God ultimately determining it. So, and then even in Acts with the choice of the 12th apostle before the apostle Paul, you have them ending casting lots. So some would say that was wrong, and that's why they actually chose someone before the Apostle Paul took that role. But nonetheless, the Apostle Paul doesn't make that argument.
That's a fun take, actually.
Yeah, it's a unique take. Very speculative. It's not a terrible take. Point being, I don't think it's necessarily sinful, but it's extraordinarily dangerous. Mm-hmm. It's not like... I would put it in a very different tier than drinking alcohol, which throughout the scriptures is praised and a blessing from God. So at no point in the scriptures does it say gambling is a blessing, not once. So is it a potentially permissible option? I would say potentially, because I think it could be done in a God-glorifying manner. Some guys just throwing in a little bit of money to play poker or something. It's a card game. They're enjoying each other. It's just, there's nothing crazy going on, right? There's no large sums of money, et cetera. Everything has a cost to it. So like if I go play basketball, I've tore 2 Achilles. So there's a cost for you is a little bit more expensive. So like paying most like $20 to play poker for 3 hours is like with a bunch of friends. Is not a high cost. It would cost me more. My back would be sore for 4 days if I go play basketball for an hour. So there's a cost to everything. As far as March Madness goes, I think due to the lack of real community and brotherhood is where gambling thrives. It forces camaraderie.
So is this because people are shooting out, here's what I'm playing, here's what I'm doing, or everyone's like laboring over the same, man, we had the Padres on the over, or I had Tatis on the under for homers.
I think it's men who don't have enough legitimate friendships and enough good things in their life to where they need to find a little rush in every nook and cranny when there's a lot more glory to just live in. And so, yeah, they can't enjoy watching a game, under the glory of God without this constant rush of hitting an over and under and whatever it might be. I would say that's 99% of guys who are at least hooked on it.
Yeah.
And what those companies are seeking. That's their main consumer.
Yeah, I don't think you're necessarily, and that's where you see them happening are going to be where you're going to gain that kind of crowd. Where we see those advertisements.
And even the commercials, it's usually like 4 dudes who are like, they're all in it together about this over under. And it's like, hey, you guys can just enjoy the game together.
Do you ever watch the Bad Beat segment on ESPN? I think Scott Van Pelt does it.
No.
Oh, it's actually hilarious because
bad beats of what?
Bad bets. So it'll be like someone will have, but it'll be some of the most random teams. It'll be like Southwestern North Dakota, like Southwestern Dakota State, like something like that versus Wimbledon, like
Jackrabbits,
just like two random schools. But they'll show that one team would have like -16, meaning like all they had to do was make sure that they didn't lose by 16, and they'll be up by like 3 and give up 3 touchdowns in a matter of a minute and a half.
Yeah.
But
someone threw $5,000 down on that or something. You're like, what are you doing, dude?
Talks about
like really? Like that's honestly like what you thought was an even remotely wise option to how to handle money. And it's just, I think men who are not busy with good things. Like I have way better things for my money. So if I'm going to play poker a few times a year with guys from church or something, like I'm just spending $20 to have a good time. And there is an elevation of the good time when there's a buy-in, because when you invest in something, where your heart is, or where your money is, there your heart will be also. So when you throw down $20, now you're more invested. That's a biblical principle. It's not a problem. If all of a sudden people are throwing down $500, $1,000 or something, it's like, okay, I would put gambling generally in the category of entertainment. And so would you spend $500 on like 2 hours in a garage with a guy, guys from church? Like that doesn't sound like a good use of entertainment funds. So yeah, if you're going to go see live basketball or live football, you might drop $500. You got to get there, you got to get tickets, get some food. But you saw the thing, the event. You're paying for this arena. You're paying for a lot of things. Like there's a return on investment than just I spent $500 in a garage playing poker, and I probably lost it most of the time. So I'd say, hey, I would put it in the category of entertainment, and therefore you have to be shrewd and wise, as you do with all your money, in that category of, is this a wise use of entertainment funds?
That speaking of all this betting, you're rocking the Madres jersey. I'm sorry.
Oh my.
Padres, my bad. The Padres jersey.
The fathers of Southern California.
Yeah, that's right. The fathers. Opening day is today.
Yes, sir.
People are, as we're speaking of gambling, people are placing their bets on the over-under for their teams and their records.
Probably.
I would be remiss if I didn't give you your opening day time to just tell us what are the Padres. Since we're a podcast based out of San Diego.
Yes.
What should we expect?
We're both Padres fans. This makes sense for us to talk about.
I don't know if I can call myself a Padre, but you want to see your little brother do well. I'm a Dodgers fan, and I want to see little bro do well.
Oh man! Okay.
And all the best.
Yeah.
Just, what it is when it's time to see us.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're going to be great. The Dodgers got the best of us in the playoffs last year. The Dodgers themselves said the playoffs the World Series was going to be won through the Padres, and the Dodgers, you got to give honor where honor's due. They're very good at winning games. They always have a great team, so they're always like truly capable of winning. It's never an underdog story ever with the Dodgers, but I do think the Padres were better last year, and the problem is when the Padres are only better 1 or 2 out of every 15 years, like if you don't hit that shot, then see you in 10 years.
The funniest thing about all that, which only just affirms the big bro, little bro narrative, is I asked you about the Padres, and somehow you gave a nice little.
I mean, that's what we're coming into. That was our last game, was against it. We're up two games. Yeah. We just had to close it out, and we did.
Big bro's shadow is really big, and when you're in it, that's all you can see and think about and compare yourself to.
We have a lot of advantages over the Dodgers, but time avails us to go through all this in this podcast. Padres are playing right now, so let's do a live something we don't often do. It's 7-4, baby.
7-4.
7-4 up on the Braves. So
Braves got a good team.
Lord willing, we close that one out.
Yeah. Hoping so.
God bless the patriarchy.
The real game comes on. They're starting right now.
Yeah,
so.
You probably have your gay nuns or something throwing out the first pitch. So we'll keep our patriarchal lineage strong.
Yeah,
the only patriarchal team in the MLB. So
maybe I'm sure they've kept that strong patriarchal theme all throughout.
Yeah, one comical thing. So I split 20 game season package with some other guys from church and ended up getting the gay pride night a couple years ago and didn't realize I don't keep track of like what the events are the night. So I just show up.
The other guys were like,
that morning somebody picked it up on, they were like, oh, Zach, like have fun at the gay pride night. And I get there, no joke. The gay pride night is essentially outside the ballpark. So it's called like out in the park or something, like coming out in the park, but it's actually outside the park. So it's in the gates, but they're not in the seats. They're in Gallagher Square, which is like a standing, you kind of like sit wherever you want in the grass part. And so all the gay people were limited to one section. So there's actually like no gay people in the 45,000, 46,000 stands. And they didn't really do anything in the whole liturgy, because every baseball game, every sport has a liturgy of how the events. And so I was like, this is actually one of the least gay games I've ever been to, because they're all rallied outside the park over there.
Actually segregated them.
Yeah, you really segregated them into like by far the worst place you could. There aren't even seats. Like, I'm like, this is great. Whoever put this together is fantastic.
It's so great when God lets the foolish use their folly against themselves.
Yep.
You said liturgy, and I know some of our listeners understand that, but for those that don't get it, first of all, define liturgy, and why are we using that term in baseball games?
Liturgy means the work of the people, and every religious event of any kind has a liturgy. I mean, that's ordinarily where you're going to see that term utilized, but the world has a liturgy. God created the world with a liturgy. The sun governs the day, the moon governs the night. There's a pattern of seasons that we can easily expect. I mean, you can expect the moon, what the moon will look like, 500 years from now on March 25th, just based on how ordered God's world is. And so, but particularly in a church, every church has a liturgy, a structure, an order of service, the work of the people and the worship of God. Romans 12 says we are to present our bodies as a living sacrifice. So we don't sacrifice animals in our services. Christ Jesus as the Lamb who was slain is the final sacrifice, atoning for our sins. But now we present ourselves as a living sacrifice unto God in our worship. And I always highlight when people they might come to our church and think, this is really a liturgical church. I've never been to a liturgical church. And I'll point out, every church has a liturgy. So even if your liturgy is, we just have an open mic and it's free flow, it's like, that is your order. And if I were to bring a different order into it, you would say, no, we don't do things that way. We do it this way. So you have a strict order, just as strict as I have an order. Additionally, I point out Padres games or any sports event, because there's call and responses at a baseball game. There's a song in the 7th inning,
like call and response, like defense.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, men say this, women say this, children say this, and there's certain scents and sights and everything. It's this enculturation into this very clear cut, the same people speaking. They only have certain people speaking at certain times. There's always a first pitch. There's all these different things that you come to expect and you come to love. And parents are very quick to get their kids enculturated into it long before they understand the game, what's going on. And we are a church that does not segregate families on the Lord's Day. And so I use that as an example to say, well, have you ever brought your kid to a sporting event? Because you probably did, because you wanted them to just kind of taste and see that the sport was good.
And think about how pissed people would be if all of a sudden a team didn't do the song "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
Yeah.
For the 7th inning stretch.
Yeah. No, people would be lost.
Yeah.
They'd be like, what happened? Like this, I've done this for decades, years. Or God Bless America on a Sunday game is the liturgy of every baseball team in America. It's comical.
When did you start to take note? When did you start to catch on that all the liturgies all over the place?
Only in the last few years have I really began to, as my appreciation for the last 6, 7, 8 years has really grown for a more robust liturgy on the Lord's Day, I started to notice how everything has a liturgy to it.
Yeah. What does that do? What does that do? Keeping that in mind that you're walking through liturgies all throughout the day. What does that do? Being aware and discerning in that way.
It helps you recognize that we're all first and foremost homo adorans, or that is men who adore. We're worshiping men. We're not first and foremost homo sapien, which is thinking men. We are thinking men, but we're first and foremost worshiping men. We do things according to our desires first and foremost, which is why many people would plainly state of many dumb things they've done in their life that was against sound reasoning, but they desired to do it. And we're made that way to worship God. We're meant to desire him and find our desires met in him and all that he has gifted us with. And so recognizing liturgies help you recognize, there's people here actually worshiping. And that's always good to be discerning of, so that you don't, as a Christian, end up worshiping false gods. And on the flip side of that, as a Christian, you end up redeeming the liturgy through actually glorifying the true God in the midst of something like a Padres game. There are people there at every Padres game who are showing up to worship a false god. And there are people, Christians should go there and redeem the liturgy.
So tell us a little bit more what that looks like. And it doesn't even have to just be baseball, whatever, but how do you know in your heart if you're a part of this worship, or if you're there enjoying this event to the glory of God? How do you know the difference?
Gratitude unto whom would be a first initial question. Gratitude unto whom? Who are you thankful for right now? Gratitude necessarily equates to dependence upon somebody, right? If I say, thank you for that question, or thank you for helping me today with something, I'm admitting I was dependent on you and I appreciate that in your help in serving me or leading me. And ultimately, all gratitude is going to find fulfillment somewhere, right? So we say thank you, and we should, to one another, always giving honor where honor is due. But there's always an ultimate gratitude that is minimally subconscious in us, of we know the gratitude doesn't stop there. There's some higher. We give glory to the world, the earth, Mother Earth, whatever, the ground, or often in an increasingly narcissist world, just the God we see in the mirror. And we kind of circle everything back to how we can get glory from it. And so I would say the Christian first should be thinking, how do I give utmost glory via gratitude to the true God for this gift? And if you can't give God gratitude, you recognize, oh man, I couldn't give him thanks for this, then you might be doing something that's objectively sinful. And that's why you feel this friction of I can't give gratitude to God when I, say a man watches pornography. It's if he can't give gratitude to God for everything in his life, and he feels a profound conviction there, then he's probably doing something sinful, or maybe he's biblically confused and he thinks, say, for example, having a beer, if he feels like I couldn't possibly give God glory for that, then I would say, well, there's plenty of scriptures to go to say you could. I'm not saying you have to drink alcohol, but you could do that unto God's glory. Whereas something like watching pornography, you could not. It's sin every time. There's no way to redeem it. And so, yeah, gratitude would be the number one and always present. So there's other ways to give God glory in things, but it'll never be less than merely thankfulness.
No, that's a great way. I think that's a great baseline to start with, and it connects the dots between everything, especially if you're thinking in this moment, can I thank God for what I am doing right now?
Yep.
If that answer is no, it's probably need to run from that thing.
Yeah.
Or am I forgetting to thank God in this moment? And that fuels a lot of all kinds of things. But what it did, what all this does segue into is our man, Wyatt Hendrickson. Wyatt Hendrickson. So for the people that don't know about Wyatt Hendrickson, I had to, after you showed me his clip and all that stuff, I'm like, I gotta look this guy up.
Yeah.
True David and Goliath story. You were saying this is like one of the biggest upsets in NCAA history. I'm like, yeah, right, dude. I've watched a lot. But when you read these resumes, it's insane.
It's pretty wild.
So let me start with Wyatt Hendrickson, because you'll think like, oh man, like this, he's not a slouch. He's obviously not a slouch. But 2-time high school state champion, went into the Air Force, had offers all kinds of different places, but decided, hey, I want to serve my country. Goes in the Air Force, also plans to serve.
Air Force Academy.
Air Force Academy, sorry. Air Force Academy. Does plan to serve once he's done as a career there. Was a 2-time Big 12 champion. And transferred to Oklahoma State this year, went 27-0. 27-0. Oh, you're like, yeah, of course he was a champion. Let me tell you about Gable Dan Stevenson.
Yeah.
First of all, Gable, that name is insane. I got to look into what that name is.
It sounds like Goliath.
Right, yeah, right. Gable and Wyatt.
Gable.
Like, so this guy Gable, 4-time high school state championship. He's literally named after Dan Gable, who is also a prominent, prolific wrestler as well.
Wow.
So he was
didn't know that.
He was destined to be. He was manufactured to be this person.
Wow.
But 4-time high school state championship. He's American, born in America. 2020 Olympic gold medalist. For his weight class, there has only been, the Americans do not dominate wrestling. Yeah. If people don't know this, Americans don't dominate. Only one other American has won gold at that weight class.
Wow.
And that was in 1984.
That's wild.
So in almost 40 years,
that's crazy.
Not an American has won the Olympic gold in freestyle at his weight class.
Man.
Just goes to show that this is not America's sport. It's not just like, I'm a basketball player and I got an Olympic gold. Like, of course you did. That is rare. He is a 2-time NCAA championship, won I forget the name of the award, but was also named twice best wrestler in all of college for all weight classes. So that's not, championship in his weight class, but named twice best wrestler of all classes.
Period, yeah.
His, you might have seen his highlight. He was he was like, who's this heavy set dude that hits backflips after he wins wrestling matches? That was him.
Yeah.
Signed a contract with WWE. This is the craziest thing. This man had not lost since 2019.
Yeah, that's like a movie worthy.
6 years.
That's movie worthy.
6 years, and we're talking wrestling. It's not like It's not pickup basketball. Like it's not. It's wrestling.
If you have a bad 5, 6, 7 minutes of your life, you're done.
And for a guy like you, torn your ACL twice.
Yeah.
Or sorry. Achilles.
How many of those matches was he sick, had the flu? Like, just like the circumstances, like, yeah, man, just not your day.
Let me tell you the number. This is before he played. 102 wins, 1 loss.
Yeah, and he lost when he didn't use either of his arms, probably.
102 wins.
That's crazy.
70 match win streak.
Yeah.
70 match win streak going into this game.
It's amazing.
And
multiple seasons,
multiple
national titles.
Forget about the fact that he actually he retired. He came out of retirement and was still kicking butt and taking names.
Yeah, because he did Olympics and he paused and then he went back. Yeah.
Yes, which I didn't know that like you could do that. But I mean, it's not like I can just jump back into New Mexico and start going crazy. You know what I mean? Like that's not working. But God could not have written a better story. Trump in attendance. It's almost comical how all this comes together.
Yeah. When I watched the video, I'm like, President Donald Trump's there?
Right. And you got
the wrestling match?
And it literally went all the way down to the end.
It's an amazing match.
Yes. Like when you look at it from that perspective, I'm like, yeah, that is an insane amount of like, obviously why it wasn't, and obviously David wasn't a slouch. Like he killed his bears, his lions and all that stuff. But like it blows my mind, and anybody else that does that too. So again, we're homo adorons.
Yeah.
Why is it that like we just can't get enough of these stories? Like every year, March Madness comes around, we want the Cinderella.
Yeah.
Every time we hit, like we can't wait to hear that. Yeah. And then the Chiefs, right? Obviously, no one wants the Chiefs to win anymore. But I remember when the first time Patrick Mahomes went up against Tom Brady, everybody wanted him to win then. Why is that?
I think a common theme in the scriptures is that God shames the wise, the worldly wise, that is, and exalts the humble. Typically, not always, but there's a association with just lower, lesser teams, players just they have to be more humble because they've been humbled. Now you can be a very proud player who's also not good and had to earn his way up, and you receive all the glory of earning it, and you don't give glory to anyone else, or gratitude, that is, when I mean glory in that sense. And so, the top don't have a monopoly on pride, but typically, especially in college athletics, there's just those teams that it's like, yeah, these guys, like they know they're just like, this is the end of their basketball career. This is the end of this is the end of this career, and none of them entered into a transfer portal. They're just sticking it out. Their dreams were to just enjoy this sport, be competitive. And then you have this group that's been bred for this, has been handpicked throughout the nation or the world. There's been tons of money. These guys are literally making, at this point, millions of dollars. We talked about this in episode 1. And these other guys are, might be getting a stipend to help pay for their groceries. I mean, some of these schools, like, it's nothing. And so it's just an objectively David and Goliath story. I mean, and that's why you hear that lingo a lot. And God loves to tell that story. He loves to tell the story of the humble being exalted and the exalted being brought low. And the Wyatt Hendrickson, when you watch that match, you hear the announcer say, "This is the craziest thing." And
when he first started off, he literally sounded like a WWE announcer.
Yeah.
Do you remember what's his name? Something King from way back in the day, but he was really going in. I love those announcers.
And he, I'm like, he ended up prefacing later in the wrestling world, and I was like, okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But even when you do broaden it out, this is one of the more epic stories I've
102 to 1.
Yeah.
I don't. Wrestling matches, not basketball games.
Yeah, it's
not
crazy.
Baseball games.
It's absolutely crazy.
Physical wrestling matches.
Another thing they said that I heard the announcer say was that Gable Stevenson had not been taken down, which is just a 3-point wrestling play in the entire this season. Not one takedown. And it comes down, he gets taken down in the last 27 seconds of his entire season.
Probably even career.
Yeah, it's probably been a very long time since he was taken down.
Right.
Which again doesn't mean he lost. It just means it's a 3 points to the other guy. He could still win a wrestling match easily 10-3, like over and over and over.
Right.
Just got the guy that got one takedown is a good hit. Great. Not one takedown this season. And Wyatt is clearly struggling. He can't pull it off if you're watching the match, and it's real intense. And I mean, all Gable has to do at this point is just literally all he has to do is not get taken down.
The only one
because like I don't know wrestling scoring that well, but I do know that's a 3-point play, and most other things are 1 or 2 points. So like if he just avoids anything but a takedown, and Wyatt just goes for it in the end, knowing you hear the coach is like under 30. Oh. And he's like, yeah, I got to go for it. And he just, you can see the fight because they end up covering, it looks like 10, 12 feet as Wyatt's like, I am going to drive my body into this so I can grab his legs and get a takedown, or I'm just going to fall on my face and he's going to like end literally on top of me, probably getting a takedown. And he just went all in. And I think it honestly caught Gable off guard. At that point, you think, and we've all felt this in sports or in any competition where you've made it, you've persevered, you've succeeded, and it's like the last little bit and you're like ready to glory in it. I'm sure he's thinking, like when he heard under 30, he's like, I have made this whole season
30 seconds until
down.
Probably
this fool comes out here with an American flag on his shoulders. I'm the one who's won gold at the Olympics. Who does he think he is? I represented our country. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, he walked up on him too. Like, like they had problems. I don't know. Yeah. I wish I had looked up in like some of their beef before, but
yeah,
it seemed like there was something else there.
But
they did not like each other.
No,
did not look that way.
No, I mean it's such an intense sport.
Yeah,
I mean there's few things more. I mean, even football is like there's a lot of separation. Whereas wrestling, like you are like face to face this close
the whole time,
the entire time,
having your manhood tested
with an aim. Like my goal is to dominate you and to pin you to where you literally beg for mercy to me and the ref.
The Greeks used to do that naked.
Those guys are almost naked, let's be honest. So there is a covering for their more modest parts, as Paul would say to the Church of Corinth, and rightly so. So I'm glad that there is a progress there, but they're not that far from it.
How manly could you be when you had like
these two like 285 dudes?
Because that was like one of the main events. Yeah, and it's like naked doesn't make any sense to do it any other way. But those Greeks, man. Glad we're in the age we are now. We've progressed.
Yeah. We've kept the wrestling, just a little bit of Christianity to it.
So Wyatt we didn't even talk about the fact that he had Jesus, more than a conqueror. And in Jesus was like all the American flag and so we had this whole integration where it's like, this was like, your Alabama, Georgia, Florida. Like, I just know that they were going crazy seeing something like that.
Yeah.
You're Christian conservative. And so I just also noticed, like, since Trump got elected, we're seeing more open conversations, like where you're seeing like Gavin Newsom is having podcasts with Charlie Kirk. And now we're seeing like, it seems like everyone's pro-America out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like and all this integration with Christ. Like, it almost seems like a quick shift where we're seeing it way more often now. People aren't ashamed to proclaim Christ.
Yeah, I think there's an inherent desire, though we do love the Cinderella story, to also love winners. And both of those, I believe, have their virtue. Neither are absolute. So there's times where you should not be rooting for the underdog if the underdog's evil.
Yeah, the devil's an underdog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A little chihuahua with, his tail between his legs. You don't want to root for him. James 4 says, resist the devil and he'll flee from you. It's like, he's just not a big deal. At the same time, he can be a lion. He can be roaring. He has worshipers. So we do love winners and we do love Cinderella stories. I think both have their virtue. And when it comes to politics, it's a competition and there's a winner. So I think there's always going to be a shift culturally to whoever won. They earned it. And there's always going to be a people who think, okay, yeah, they won. Like, we'll take a step in that direction. Some people will take a few jumps in that direction. Some people might revert back, but that's going to be the minority of like, I'm going to be less American now that a more overtly pro-American guy won. Most people are going to take a step or two in that direction because people like to go with the tide, for better or for worse. And I think that's what we've been observing. And then as far as Christianity, well, I think as far as like what Gavin Newsom did with sports is just him recognizing, okay, yeah, the left just went way too far. Progressivism can progress you right off a cliff, and that's what they did. So the fact that Donald Trump won the popular vote, I think to them was very humbling, and they thought, okay, yeah, if we don't just have the slightest bit of honesty to admit that, if you, a D1 lineman for football, went and competed in any female sport, that it wouldn't be fair under the guise that you're a female. Like, I mean, it's just laughable. It's stupid. So, they
except for swimming, but
that's true.
We won't talk about why that's the case.
Yeah, it's just because of your size.
Speaking of pride and battles and going back and forth, how much have you been hearing about this whole Stephen A versus LeBron? This for a while was like trending, like the most viral interaction, and it's only adding on more to it after LeBron made a appearance on one of the best sports podcasts out right now, is the Pat McAfee show. How much of this do you know about? What have you been?
I don't know much. I saw he posted a clip of Stephen A boxing. It was in
That was so bad.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Stephen A was like, I tore both my rotator cuffs and was like working back up to, basic human strength. And but I thought Stephen A won that roast. That
to me, I feel like when you look at it objectively, I really do think that Stephen A is actually giving the most details.
Yeah.
And doesn't sound contradictory.
Yeah. What would you say is boiling it down?
Yeah. So
the main conflict.
Essentially just to bring all of our listeners up to speed, there's this interaction. LeBron James goes up to Stephen A. Smith, and this is in the middle of a game, not at the beginning, before the warm-up, not at the end, not even at halftime. This is during a timeout in the third quarter. So the timing of it is just very interesting.
It's like a rush.
Right.
Passion.
Yeah.
See Stephen A.
But you've been playing basketball for 2.5 quarters. I just don't anyways. LeBron goes up, and all you can see in the video, you see the back of Stephen A. Smith's head. LeBron's facing him, and obviously LeBron is just big and massive and towering. And he's like, you can't see what he's saying, but he's like, he's like giving you the head nod, like there's a problem there.
It's not a friendly conversation.
Yeah, not at all. Not even close. And so LeBron has yet to really reveal the details of what he said there. He's only just said like how Stephen A. has been wrong, but he never has said what he said.
Is this about his son? Or?
Yeah, apparently the topic was his son. Okay. And Stephen A. says that LeBron said, "Stop talking about my expletives son. Keep his name out your mouth," basically. And Stephen A. Smith says in that moment, like, what am I going to do? Start this whole scene? It's the middle of the third quarter. This is an ESPN televised game. I just got a fat contract like that I signed today that I don't want to lose. Probably he's thinking is what he said.
He signed that day?
Stephen A. Smith, yeah. It's just the timing is so interesting. And to give LeBron credit, he's the one that says he's so calculated. He's so dialed in. He does everything for a reason. He's the one that claims he doesn't do things out of just emotion and passion. He claims to be very smart. So giving you that charity, you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't just if Draymond Green did that, it was one of our favorite guys. I can't wait for the next Draymond Green news. But
you're confused when he doesn't do that.
Exactly. If Draymond Green
he's still there shaking hands.
Right. Draymond Green gave Stephen A. Smith a hug in the middle of the third quarter.
Yeah.
That would go
Draymond
viral.
drops his own teammates.
Right, exactly. So LeBron's not known for doing these. So either A, he was like in an emotional state because it's his son, and I can see that now having a son now. I see a little kid like throw sand at my son, like I almost want to fight that little kid. You know what I mean? Like I'm ready. That I don't care how old that kid is, but I want to throw him somewhere else. So anyways, you see this passion, and Stephen A. says, well, this was all that happened. He was coming at me as a father, and I don't fault him for that. But this is the case. You put your son in the situation. He wasn't ready at the time that we brought him in, and now he's being thrusted into NBA games when he's clearly not ready. Time moves on. Bronny's starting to ball. Like, he's dropping buckets in the G League. Has a pretty good game, dropped 17 points in an NBA game, which is not easy. With Giannis on the court, says something. And then LeBron goes on the Pat McAfee show and like says that Stephen A. Smith is on this Taylor Swift tour because Stephen A. Smith has gone to different podcasts and explained the situation. What I feel like, I'll actually get your judgment on that, but Stephen A. Smith since then has like gone to like 3 or 4 different podcast mediums to talk about this situation. So LeBron in his instance is feeling like, oh, he's capitalizing on this conflict.
Yeah.
Which LeBron did start in the first place. Stephen A. initially claimed that he never planned on talking about it, but it went viral and he is an employee. And if your boss says, hey, you got to talk about this, then he's got to talk about it.
And he's a podcaster. That's all he does.
That's what he's paid for.
His whole career is just speaking in front of a microphone about drama and sports.
Yeah. So apparently Braun felt like he took it out of the family. He took it out of sports context and in the family and criticized him as a father throwing his son into a situation. And so they've been having this back and forth banter. Now Stephen A. at this point is just calling Braun out for being a liar. LeBron made some other comments about another commentator, Brian Windhorst. Apparently there's some contradictions there, but they've got some you're talking about the most prominent sports broadcaster could be ever at this point. Like everyone knows who Stephen A. Smith is.
Yeah.
Whether you like him or not, you know who he is. And
you can hear his voice in your head.
And then you have LeBron. So you have this conflict between commentator relationship, actual athlete player. And it's interesting because there's some kind of unwritten boundary here that athletes are like, you can't comment about, where Stephen A. feels like I didn't even cross that line. What do you think? Like, should there be a line there? Like, is Stephen A. Smith just like doing his job? Is LeBron taking it too personal? Like, what? I know I just fed you a whole bunch of stuff there, but
yeah, I don't know the situation enough. I really don't know much more beyond what you just said, and then a couple more minutes of looking into it. I don't track LeBron. Not a big LeBron fan.
Well, let me just generalize it more this way then. A commentator makes a comment about any athlete, and commentator makes a comment about an athlete's son happens to play the same sport.
Yeah.
Calls him a bad father because of the situation he puts him in. Like, that's objectively true. He said, LeBron, you did this, you put him in this situation. And so therefore he's saying, like, you as a father need to be more careful where you put your son into. Is that a place for a commentator to make that, or are we outside the lines here?
I would gauge a bit how the son is handling it all, which I don't know how Bronny's handling his time. You know, if he's like depressed, anxious, you know, if he's not that, he's overall doing well. He's like, yeah, I'm on an NBA contract. Like, I've made it. I'm doing well. I'm not doing that well in the NBA, but I'm already at this level of which most guys don't make it. Then it sounds like the father did some good things to set up his son to make it to the NBA, who otherwise might not have likely even made it to the NBA. So you would say you don't even knock LeBron for being so great that he got his son. Let's say, I don't even think, that's not my claim, but would you say you don't knock LeBron for his
getting his son to make it in the because he's that great?
No, not really. I think you got to call a spade. So I'm not gonna if that's me as a dad, I'm not gonna look at all the other players and be like, no, my son's just as good as all of you. My son's just as good as Dalton Connect. I just, he just got drafted a little later, or that there was no other players who would have got drafted ahead of him. The reality is, and I've observed enough to think, if Bronny James did not have James for his last name, who was a normal guy, his last name was Gilman. Okay, let's be honest. He would not. Same exact statistics.
What's your dad's? They'd be asking him, asking the Valor, what's your dad's health history? Oh, 2 Achilles.
Yeah, two Achilles,
back problems in his middle school,
and the guy unintentionally but cracks gay jokes in a sports podcast. Like, we do not want this at all. Okay, we want nothing to do with this. So. Yeah, he can't even make it through a rec league basketball game. But I mean, assuming it's not that bad. But I don't think he would have got drafted. He would have probably stayed in college, kept working up, improving, et cetera, and see how it goes. So I think you just got to call a spade. But as far as a father getting through his father's own prestige, building something great to where, that's part of his inheritance, and he's great enough to where he didn't need to die to leave his son that inheritance. So in fact, it was advantageous to get his son on the court when he was still on the court because it's a first. And so I think just being honest about that, and you can still give all the caveats of like, my son's worked. I'm sure he's worked really hard. I'm sure he's shot innumerable shots. I can imagine there's been many hours of his dad just out there with a trainer and hiring a trainer and all these things to get him to perform well. So you don't need to knock the guy of like, it's purely through his father. It's like, no, I'm sure you can't put up 17 points based on your father in the NBA. So you can get opportunity. And I do think, honestly, I don't know how many games he's played, but I do think you can go to the average Joe's gym down the street and find a good baller there and put him in an NBA game. And if he plays 100 NBA games, he could probably get a 17-point game. Honestly, I don't. Everyone can have their game if they know how to shoot. They know the fundamentals. So I'm not that impressed with a couple off games. Statistics matter over a season because they're helpful, but I don't knock LeBron or Bronny for Bronny for taking that opportunity. And Bronny, Lord willing, I don't know him. I haven't observed his meetings, but he should be honest as a son of my dad has in many ways gotten me here. And even every athlete says that about their parents.
Right. Truly.
So it's just more true for him.
Not even just off his reputation, but the things he probably learned from watching his dad practice and work ethic and shooting for him.
And enculturation. How many NBA games has he been to?
Exactly.
Courtside.
Yeah.
You're you inherited a lot. Just own up to it and humbly receive it.
And at the end of the day, I do think that LeBron, there's no athlete that's perfectly treats the game of basketball right. But there's a reason why people watch LeBron James play.
Yeah.
Because he's fun to watch.
Yeah.
He's good for the NBA.
Yep.
To watch him play basketball.
Oh, a great competitor.
So
freak athlete.
Right. Would he not instill that same thing? He loves the game of basketball so much. It's the same way a man starts a corporation and passes that down to his son. He cares so much about that corporation. Why would he pass it down to a lazy, good-for-nothing son that's just going to destroy it when that time comes? And I put this LeBron and Bronny situation in the same category. So,
I agree with you.
Ending off on this, one of the world's greatest athletes, boxers, George Foreman, passes away last week at age 76. Kind of a interesting moment for me. That's actually the same. My dad will be 76 this year. So when you really put that into perspective, it kind of hits you in a little bit of a different way. But Man, in honor of him, I had to look at some George Foreman highlights.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you had recently, but
I need to. I'm going to after this.
Like, if you just want to see a big person just not care about getting hit, but he just knows, like, whatever you throw at me is not going to bother me, but you cannot handle more than 10 of my punches.
Scary.
And that's all I need to give you.
Yeah.
This man was massive. And honestly, I didn't spend much time. That wasn't my era at all. So I didn't spend much time with that. But a couple of things about George Foreman. I don't know if you know his history, but he grew up like very poor, impoverished, oftentimes, which also made me sense. Like, how did he still grow so big? But very poor. Like, there was a famous story that he likes to tell where he was like running from, I can't remember if it was police or something like that, but like he had to cover himself in like dog feces and stuff like that to get away from, like, I can't remember, but anyways, he's been through some like extremely rough times. Comes across a club, and they basically teach him how to box. He comes across this boxing coach, teaches him how to box. Ends up winning the Olympics, winning an Olympic gold at like the age of 19. And
do you know what city he grew up in?
Marshall, Texas. Yeah, grew up in Marshall, Texas. Dropped out of school in the 9th grade. Wow. Street gangs, run-ins with the law, and then that's when he joined the Job Corps. That's a government organization, isn't it?
Sounds like it.
I think so. One of those moments where God redeemed something. Gets a hold of a boxing coach, literally meets him in 1965, and 3 years later wins an Olympic gold medal.
That's crazy.
3 years. 3 years. At age 19. Wins an Olympic gold medal. 2-time world heavyweight championship in 1973, and then took a 10-year retirement and came back and won another one in 1994.
Wow.
So that's what's crazy.
Not in the Olympics of that last one.
No, that was just the world heavyweight championship.
Okay.
So world heavyweight championships are actually higher prestige than Olympics.
Okay.
So that's really tough to do.
Yeah.
His boxing record, 76 wins. How many knockouts do you think? 76 wins. How many do you think were knockouts?
I don't know boxing very well, so I don't know what's normal.
I wish I could give you the Floyd Mayweather perspective. Like, I'd say like half of his were like knockouts, but 76 wins, 68 by knockout.
I was honestly thinking in the 30s.
Yeah, 68 knockouts.
That's crazy. How many deaths?
Like, gosh. Probably a lot. Probably ended a lot of lives earlier than what they would have if they hadn't met George Foreman.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That's right? I mean, a tiny little class can rejoice they weren't knocked out by George Foreman.
68 knockouts.
But they weren't knocked
That's
out.
A lot of knocking out.
Yeah, honestly, the guys who made it through all those rounds probably died earlier.
That's a lot. It's a lot. Like 68 times you drop somebody.
That's crazy.
When you watch his highlights, and you'll be like, it makes sense. But like, his guard is down here. He does not care about getting hit. He just knows all I have to do is hit you. That's why it was like one of those moments, like why Muhammad Ali, when he stopped him, that was so, because he was just knocking people out. No one had a chance.
So Muhammad Ali beat George Foreman.
Yeah. Rumble in the Jungle. Yeah. That's the famous Rumble in the Jungle, which Ali with Will Smith in there is pretty good. Before Will Smith went crazy. As you know, the George Foreman grill. Did you ever have one of those?
I did not, but I mean, you definitely knew about it.
Never had the George Foreman grill?
I mean, I don't think I did, but maybe we did.
Goodness. What?
I mean, it was a thing. Like,
he sold 100 million units. You never had
100 million?
100 million units.
That's a third of it. One out of every 3 Americans owns one of those.
Right.
And lots of people who own like 15 of them, collector's edition.
Right. Yeah, I had a George Foreman grill in college. I remember that. Yeah, dude, those things were clutch.
To it, or just
I think it was just like because like you can feel like you're grilling at home, and it would like catch the grease at the bottom for you.
Okay,
like it was just the first of its kind. Like everything was on the skillet, or you like had to go out into the barbecue grill. So like You were actually grilling
simple,
in the kitchen.
transportable,
right?
Hooked up to like what, a little propane tank?
I'm pretty sure we still have. No, it's just electric.
Oh wow!
Plug it into the thing, and it's like it almost looks like a skillet, but with like ridges on it, and it's kind of tilted, so it catches your grease. Dude, there's no bacon better on the George Foreman grill.
Oh man,
I'll tell you right now, you cannot make bacon better.
Yeah,
than on a George
especially
Foreman
like
grill.
an old one, I bet.
Oh yeah, where
It's
the
like
grease just been
this much bacon
I
grease.
go home and like,
you still have yours?
They still have one. I don't know if it's the one, but the bacon at my mom's house.
I got D1 offers because of how much bacon I have.
The bacon at my mom's house, it's a lot different. And I think it's because of that George Foreman grill. For sure.
Yeah.
Did you know he became an ordained minister?
I did not. I don't know much about George Foreman, but I saw that. I mean, I saw you had a testimony of converting to Christianity a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago, back in the 70s.
So was he still boxing when he became minister?
It said so.
Okay.
Said he retired in 1977, became an ordained minister, and then he came back. So I guess he was that later on. Which they had him on this show where he was basically breaking down his faith and his experience. He had like a near death experience in which he saw like all these visions of hell and whatnot. And he said like he had never been preached to, like never went to church, never grew up with any of that. But just he said that in his testimony from his videos, like he came out of this and like he was just basically screaming the name Jesus.
Wow.
And
from this vision thing?
Yeah, from this vision. And he's like, I didn't know, like no one ever told me about Jesus or anything like that. He's like, I just came up screaming the name Jesus. And ever since then, like I've been trusting in God my whole life.
Interesting.
I don't know all of his fruits and all that other stuff with the ministry.
Sounds like a lot of bacon, maybe some other drugs. But here he is. God works mysterious ways sometimes.
He really does. He really does. But yeah, even listening to it, I'm like, he never really states like the gospel of sins forgiven. He does say like there's, one Lord, one baptism. Okay. He quotes that scripture. He says that.
That's good.
So I know that gives you a little bit of hope, but like if someone who says that they're an ordained minister, and literally I watched their video, it says this section is about the gospel, and their gospel presentation is not the gospel, but it's just
that.
Yes, like one of the videos later in life, ordained minister. It's like a CBN interview, and like he's talking about his conversion, and then it gets to the gospel. Like this section on the YouTube video says the gospel, and he says, oh man, what does he say? It wasn't the gospel, but it was just something like inspiration. No matter how hard it is, trust in God. That was his good news. Is it possible like for him, like something that says the gospel is so clear, he should be presenting the gospel and he doesn't present the gospel? Is he saved? Phew. I know it's a super huge, I
don't know the man. He's not in my church. Now he's passed away. See what his overall testimony is. Did he end up getting married?
Yeah, he was married in 1977. I don't know much about what happened after that, but when he,
as far as he's just married once.
Yeah, I think, far as I know,
that'd be a good testimony. I mean, we know a tree by its fruits. So I look at his life. I look at his association to the local church throughout his life. The fact he's an ordained minister to me doesn't say much at all.
Right.
Unless, you got to know ordained by who and unto what or unto who. It's like, what was he, just because he wanted to wear the badge minister, or was he a minister unto a people, a local church? And the best testimony of whether or not he was Christian is going to be evidenced by his wife and children and his local church.
Yeah.
And if he didn't really have a local church, then I'm going to probably err on the side that he wasn't a Christian. If he didn't have over a long life, clear habit of loving God's people, which I would say is really the heartbeat of the tests of 1 John is, do you love other Christians in a tangible consistent way.
Yeah.
And his wife and children would be the other people he'd really want a testimony from as to what his life really looked like.
And like, even just to not even just like make it about George Foreman, but to generalize it even more.
Yeah.
Can someone be saved if they're not able to truly like articulate the gospel?
Yeah. I mean, it could have been a one-off that it was a miscommunication.
Yeah.
They wanted him to say the gospel and he was distracted or didn't say it. So
For sure.
The gospel is the power of God and salvation, Paul says to the church at Rome. 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says, this is the gospel I preach to you of first importance, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scriptures, that he was buried, and he rose again the third day in accordance with the scriptures. 28 words. It's as short as I think you can make the gospel before you're just not referring to the gospel. You're leaving out fundamental aspects of it. There's more to say about the gospel. The gospel accounts are much longer than that. Even 1 Corinthians 15 continues, but I would say that, if you were to boil it down as thinly as you can, you need those three ingredients of events, and then you need the right character, who is Jesus Christ. So even at our own church, if everyone who becomes a member has to go through a member interview, and I only ask two questions. What is the gospel is one of them. And if they recite to me that, and it's an open notes, open book test, I want everyone to know that answer. It's not a trick. But if they just quote to me that, I usually ask a couple clarifying questions and say, okay, but when you said Jesus died for your sins, who are you referring to? Who's Jesus? Because if they're thinking about someone who's not Jesus, then it's the wrong gospel. So, yeah, I mean, if he really couldn't articulate it, like, let's assume that was actually indicative of him having a complete inability to know what the gospel was, then, yeah, I'm definitely going to lean on the side of him probably not being a Christian. Yeah. And he was in a country where it was comfortable and even advantageous at that time to be a Christian. So there's plenty of other motives as to why you would wear the badge. I'm a Christian. I believe in the gospel. Or I have put my faith in Jesus Christ. That could mean a lot of things. Yeah. The Bible has something that necessarily is to mean. And it's good news that it is definitive, right? That there's actually boundaries as to what that means. But if he was outside those bounds, then yeah, I mean, the reality is when he stood before the Lord upon dying, like, he very well might have said, I did all these things in your name. And Jesus might have said, I never knew you. I don't know the man at all. So
yeah, absolutely.
He might have very well, God's unfathomably merciful. And he loves to bless the ignorant. And so if he was truly an ignorant, he doesn't sound like an ignorant man in general. I mean, he took a lot of head punches, I imagine. But yeah, I don't know enough to give my yay or nay to his salvation, nor do I like to go into those waters unless they're part of my old flock. And then even then, you try and be very, very careful before you throw out things like that.
Right. And on both sides of things, right? And I think that the reason why I bring that up is because there's just so often where you will have someone that you should have a good idea of are they saved or not?
Yeah.
That close relative, that close friend.
Yeah.
And you're like,
the ordained minister.
Right. And they say like, well, yeah, I love the Lord. I love Jesus.
Yeah.
I put my faith in God every day. I pray to God every day. And I use George Foreman as an example of like, he truly seemed like a very kind man, fun to be around, was lively, probably faithful to his wife. When he says he loves God, he certainly does. And I use him as an example, not to just take him and, he's dead now, so we can say whatever we want about him, but more so to help us discern for our friends and family who are living, and whether they are prominent or not, to help them and truly discern where they are at. Yeah. So we know how to treat them, because there's explicit commands how to treat a believer or non-believer, or even correct those that are in error as well. So
yeah,
I really more so ask you to just, for that clarity behind someone says, oh yeah, I love God, I put my faith in God. You just,
it's not something, if you've ever double checked anything in your life, if you ever thought I should be sure before I submit this, email, text message. There's infinitely more important to make sure and do a sober examination, as Paul says in 2 Corinthians, to examine yourselves to see if you're in the faith. So there is nothing more important to check. And God is very gracious to provide a lot of markers that you can take real thankful praise unto God for seeing those markers alive and well in your life. So it's not an examination. Christians can err on the side of examining themselves too much, and they're never sure in their faith. And God does not desire that, but He definitely doesn't desire false people who are not converted to take false solace in thinking they're right with God. So yeah, you got to do a real examination. Then you got to take the Word of God as it comes with a heart of gratitude. And as you do that, you're going to see and savor Jesus Christ, the main character of the Word of God and the main character of all of reality. And as you actually do bend your knee and confess His glorious name as Savior and Christ and King and Lord of Lords, the Lord loves to welcome those sons into His kingdom. So yeah, be always discerning and kind of going back to the beginning of the podcast, always be recognizing, who do I give gratitude to, and who should I be giving gratitude to, and how quick am I to even give gratitude to anyone? Because an absence of gratitude is also indicative of a hard heart. But a soft and malleable heart that's been converted loves to give thanks to our brothers, to our sisters, to our parents, or to our church. It flows naturally out of a heart that recognizes, wow, God's gifted me so much with all these great gifts of mainly people, and all that praise ultimately ascends to the Father, who loves to smell those prayers of gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything to end on in the light of George Foreman's death, is recognizing that man's power as just this one human being, and being able to take, if this man could be so powerful, how much more is our God?
Yeah, amen.
So,
Amen.
With that being said, it's been another episode of CSPN, the sports podcast that will not be reduced to ashes when Christ returns.
Appreciate y'all.